tenga de di man la corta ina la corta di so much today.
Everybody.
today da 가자는 뭐지 나랑 그때 갈아고래 들어와 요비 그 로주는 뭐지 나랑 휴고를 좀소 근데 저당 다제 다제당 남아 대바셔야 돼 당도 위치에 대바셔야 그랬다 당완단도 봐 이치비 대바셔 여러 대바셔 대바 좀 남아 좀 쓰기로 어떻게 되네 다제당 지난 가자는 뭐지 당분 가서 예당 지나다 제사한테 이 스타 rinpoche 휴사다 가서 할 타는 보러 와. 제 진행 말이네 자지 제 소리 디강래 나다. 니마 호라다 내 순자만 총로 와. 와다 총도. 혼지 마송 사지당에 호크로 뒤디시요. 와다 카르잖아. 다 로르준도 이자서 싫어요 말와. 야당아 직통 급자 급치 탐바선 사리. 급치 탐바선 지금 송이로 와. Rigon zai song, rigon song du tene dadadi. Rigon te rom ser, longba je yore. Te du zai jamgong chung sang rinpoche, da ba chung rinpoche, da gupa nyo yore se, lam do dara. Te rom longbe maar kuso dara, chongba je do, te rom longbe do yore. Te maar sta, chongba je yore dara. Te rom longba rwa. Ti ki longbe kin do, maar song dara kuso dara je, dara chongba je yore. 어떠라 손자들 가르tur 그래서 되게 고파진도로 아주 그 강에 힘이로 왔다 됐다. 어떤 가르tur 그래서 고파진도 되게 고파서 용이로. 다른 가는 거 지금 너다 제일 다디. 어디디 다 고파디 등장도 뭐도 디스코 중중으로 그렇게 디스 감본도 되디. 디스코 감본 나거라. 다른 디스코 봐요. 너무 여고 힘이로 와서 됐다. 가르tur 그래서 람도 그냥 용이 아니고 받으셔야 돼. 디 말이 반 소녀지라고 하는 게. 야도 이 파트는 아주 나한테 도지. 배제最近 다다 여지 파트. 말은 아주 용이디. 용이. 다들 라마 자신 뭐지 인지를 나서. 왔다 된지 와서 요리 되네. 내가 또 발로는 자. 때문에 뭐 가시라 되지 요사 가서 파트. 왔다 된지 되네. 어떻지? 파트 스테이션 여러 점부터. 원가서 배우요. 뭐 키만. 중상은 뭐 빠지는 고파도 되지. 소야. 가는 뭐 지고 봐도 나만 가시 고파도 와셔야 돼. 가도 일단 지금 로지트선다. 믹스 통야요 말아서 거다. 어다 되지. 뒤송다. 니마 뒤송다 말아총 다 뒤송살반다. 이차 배공 보여라. 어ter이 다들 인도 다 저한테 된 거지. 저는 뭐 세패하고서 빠중는 뭐지. 공파도 테이크 공조 전부 대표하고서 어때는 이제 지금 그 야치르고 됐어요. 난 제다 마송 다 고바티 그런데 요소. 저는 뭐지 저당들 뭐지 되도 마용어서 빼마고 페브렐란도. Bemagul, the combo such a year. Lamga, Mar Nanchan Piachi, Lamgan Rosa de Nindo, they has and Romagul Lamgan Rosa, they has and Rosi Lamga, sorry. Has and Romagul Lamga, Maton Rocho Samar, has and Rocho Samar. Terema Piachi, Lamga Chulu show, Shashi Lambo. There is Remote, the Tapi Himana goes, Remote Mosaic, Chiran Gelon Bachun, which was the only Yabundo. So those. The zone is the Namga market in Rosa Yomara. The Lazandro, Chosen Rasara. The Bajunum going to Jares. They don't teach about Yonora. Bajunum doing your Randiuntina. Then Bajunum, you don't have a tiny or Randium. Tarn which Rayoma. Do you tell the Bajunum going to Jaras? Take a Bajunum going to Jadu. The Bajunum Guno and Tombo Yosari. Guno Tombo Gompas Royosata. 这趟经验公把做下在一起，对对，节目清上的不去，他老做明下效果的效果啊，不就那么些。这个这样的问题对他，我听这个问题出发是啷个？他这个让通嘛，通吧，他通吧是，通嘛，他通吧是哪那吧嘛？我他的个这样的我不就那么问题，不就那么这个，这个他出场嘛的啦，网络吃上的，节目清上的不去，不上松是，那节目清上的不去，他拍不出去嘛都是。 The matter that Chinese, the Dakundon. The Chote Calagur, on to some Chilana, Nanjins, Nanzina, that you don't know those parts, Compandon, the neta. The Ruchi Rezo and the Gunti Tavat. That Gunti down, got it down. They were second on the par, National. Chelsea Chimbo, I reckon National inside that on that, you know. What that Ruchi Rezo get to the corner. What did you what Angajan Buchi? The Bajun Munje Sama has Alperes. As I showed it, they showed it, didn't Bajun Gompas also. The Gompas also did and Gajan Buch Man Nanchan Piachi, Motale Sares. That in the room traveled to Lando. Conto Jamon Chusan Buch, when the Jari, set up Bajun Gompas also. Jamon Chusan Buch in Gajan Buchi. That the Lasa showed the race. They are their shoes. Or to his own sons. There's only that comes to Karasho, she not to Cabayo Marathi Sando. She hadn't today gone to Suzu. Songs and Chawaka can do those. She's okay and Gargo Betray and those. They didn't get Jan Bukara, they didn't get Jan with a cheese. What then Gajan was Hughes as a chitty? They don't much Mapiachi, Hana Mocha, so let's have it. Nanjan Paya. That you want to sound to those. The Parshu Sarwa. What Yamonamica Karnan, I think you drop it, so that not change mess, yeah. But you know, what's a Dumbu, don't Chumura. What the Pibjins, but you know, good on Chumbuto, so Doji Lobon Garnamach and Nandi to reach it. But you know, shame pets are good on Chumbuto, so gone nothing. Doji Lobon so on Garnamach and Nandi to Chumbu, what the new does at Landora. That you don't know, Tata than you love. 지금 가지고 청소용 저 빠지는 뭐지 공파대야서 백해신 보러 와. 어다서 지랑가랑 통 투도 그러다. 다 들으면 다시 다 후나 무슨 연재 많이 오러 와.
So I was asked to tell some stories about my connection to Garchen Rinpoche and my devotion to him. And so we cultivate devotion to the Guru, and that begins with like a faith that is like an inspiration, and then it becomes longing, and then it becomes trust. And so that's kind of also how it kind of evolved for me. So first, when I met Garchen Rinpoche for the first time, I didn't really actually meet him. I was sitting quite far away in an assembly. But actually even before that, when I just heard about him for the first time, and at that time I was actually still in Tibet, and already the Cultural Revolution had happened, so there were not a lot of history books or the texts available. So it was hard to really know which who is who, which Lama belongs to which lineage, and so on. So anyways, it was there was not much information available in general. So it was around 1990 when I went to Drupon Til, which is close to Lhasa. And so I went through Drupon Tertom. It's like a village which is close by. And I went into this store, a shop. And they were like a Dharma shop. And there were different pictures of various lamas, some of whom I recognized and some I didn't. There was an image of His Holiness Chungtsang Rinpoche and also of Pachung Rinpoche. And there was also a picture of Garchen Rinpoche. And actually at that time I didn't even know who is Garchen Rinpoche. So this image caught my eye, his picture caught my eye, and I asked the merchant who that lama is. And he said, oh, that's Gar Drulkum. And of all the pictures, that's the one that I bought. I wanted to buy one picture, so I bought that picture of Garchen Rinpoche. I didn't actually know who that is, but I just thought of buying it. And also I was a little bit young at that time, and maybe I didn't know so much about everything. And also, actually, anyways, in the image, Rinpoche looked a little thinner than normal. Anyways, I didn't recognize him. I just thought this must be a really very precious lama, so I got this picture. And it actually still exists. It's still there, but it's back in Tibet. And so there was this time when Pachung Rinpoche, who is the lineage holder, the Jikung was... There's actually an image here. He's the lama on the far right side here. That's Pachung Rinpoche. And he was very old already at that time, and he was not to live for much longer. And so Garchen Rinpoche at that time was actually traveling in Tibet to Bemago, and there was an area called Gompo where he stayed. And so anyways, he was on his way to Bemago to meet his mother, Garchen Rinpoche's mother. And so from Nangchen, where Rinpoche came from, there's basically two roads, one that goes to Lhasa and one that doesn't go to Lhasa. And the one that goes to Lhasa, I'm actually not allowed to go there, so it was blocked. And also there was a flooding, and there was not really a road. And so at that time, Rinpoche ran into some monks who told him about Pachung Rinpoche. But actually there was not really anywhere to go, because Drupon Til, where Pachung Rinpoche close by lived, is on the way and of course through Lhasa. But Rinpoche somehow was able to pass through the road. And so in order to meet Pachung Rinpoche, and then he went there. And at that time, he was really close to death, but he didn't die yet. In fact, he intended to die some years before, but Chungtsang Rinpoche supplicated him to stay. And so he stayed another 3 years. And so then Garchen Rinpoche came to see him, and then Pachung Rinpoche told him that now is the time to transmit all the transmissions of the Drupon Kagyu empowerments and the instructions, all the transmissions. And he had originally intended, since Pachung Rinpoche was the lineage holder, he had intended to transmit that whole Drupon lineage to Chetsang Rinpoche, but Chetsang Rinpoche also wasn't able to go to Tibet, and so therefore he assigned Garchen Rinpoche to be the lineage holder, kind of the one who is in charge of the lineage's teachings, and so he gave him the entire lineage in the form of a mind transference. So it was basically transferred from within a state of Mahamudra. And so this is how Garchen Rinpoche met Pachung Rinpoche. And then after that, Rinpoche left, and then soon later, Pachung Rinpoche passed away. And at that time, Garchen Rinpoche was in Lhasa, almost on his way back to Nangchen. He had already ordered the car. The car, in fact, already was there to pick Rinpoche up to bring him back to Nangchen. And so at the same time, because Pachung Rinpoche had died, Chungtsang Rinpoche, Holiness, tried to get a hold of Garchen Rinpoche to serve as the Vajra master for the funeral ceremonies. And so he sent a few monks, but of course, at those days, it was not easy to find somebody. And so they were looking for him, and they asked around, and in a shop, they asked a few monks, do you know about Garchen Rinpoche? And then those monks said, oh yeah, we are Garchen monastery monks. So then they brought him to Garchen Rinpoche, and actually his car was already there, but because Holiness asked him to attend, to be the Vajra master, to preside over those ceremonies, canceled the car and wanted to follow these instructions and not go to Nangchen after all. So then he went to the funeral services for Pajung Rinpoche, where he acted as the Vajra master. And so just the reason for mentioning all of that is because in the Jigkung Kagyu lineage, that's the reason why Garchen Rinpoche is considered to be so precious, so important too, because he's really the holder. He was the one who had received, but was entrusted with the entire lineage and all the empowerments and the instructions and so on. So in any case, this was a time where I have not yet met him personally myself.
tene da jikson gubja gubchu ko ni na tilo re tadu tilo da tila de dom le ka chu ja chim bo su su no de kon kana lu so king ma wa da tadu da nga zo nam ma bon ro sing ba ba ro so ma bon ro so an tadu ya da kon so le du telam do de ngone chin ti par na nga zo par je yo ra di la man ga ram set pe bia re zo no se ina da tadu de an ko ti la za de chok chen ya bo ra sa ma re我听着做东西，他在早前不在那一把电看到什么，但我做什么，他就用多，他接投票嘛，我这里。我送嘛，你爸爸那本家中，我做那么忙不着。个人不，当不我那些做着，往那年是吧？往那年个钱人不点点学，个人不是点点学做东西。你呢？这我做这实际上看看的话，这做我新鲜的话工作。让种种拉新巴特，这就像有啥嘛，这都是挺重要的事。我就是拉的下的，那么早起不见得也是的，什么我做扎就有嘛拉的。
So then in 1992 was the monkey year, and according to the Jikung tradition, in the monkey year we hold a very special events where all the important empowerments and teachings of the Jikung lineage are bestowed, and in that year it was held at Dedrum.
Also,
Dedrum is the place where Guru Rinpoche had practiced. It's a holy place for Guru Rinpoche. And so that's where the monkey year teachings were being held in that year. And many people went, also my father went. And so when they came back, I still had this picture of Garchen Rinpoche. And so then kind of they pointed at that and said, well, they said that Lama Garchen Rinpoche would come to those teachings and be the main Vajra master and confer empowerments there and so on. But because Garchen Rinpoche was coming from Nangchen, from Qinghai, and didn't get the permission to travel to that area in central Tibet at that time. And so again, I kind of heard his name and this feeling that this is a very special Lama arose in me, but still I haven't met him.
Dobeti pa zam sme rasta ja hig marwati di atin je tene ta tire nga jikton gubja gubchi posom le jagale rawa gubchi posom le yare tu posom tanda ba piche jinda china jukse jungni sna le ba jire dorje den sonyi tire ya warana sten garjan bo tambo tara jesten jasen je do yo manga su ja schema do te du gasen rumbo chi den warana choten ko ra pe den garan bo chire se te pe de den te je nyong do ro anda con ora per nga so te rodi de je se ra mixi on de je de ke ja la ya so ya chung ma so nga so zar ba chi no go so mo do ja ga de ro ina kong yin ba ha ko da kong re se mo jo te nga no bo chi re nam do ina kan sa ba yin de ni ja sta par je de za me ra asn sia de ba ke ja la ya no bis nyam chung da wa ta ji da ho lu so an la ma lam sang je sen ju mo bo ke ja la ya te lu so chi la yo ma ro 저런 하고 그래 하는 거야. 제가 서로한테 양지면.
So at that time I just knew that he is a very special Lama. And so, but at that time, it was more like a kind of an inspiration. I just felt inspired by him. And then later, in 1993, is when I arrived in India first. And it was November or December in winter time. And I first went to Bodh Gaya and to Varanasi. And in fact, that's where I've sort of met Rinpoche first, not really in person. So actually, I saw him circumambulating a stupa there. And some of the monks there said, "Oh, this is Garchen Rinpoche." So that's how I knew that it was him. But then also I just arrived from Tibet, and so now in Tibet we are a bit shy, so we don't just like walk up to a High Lama and say hello or just start talking. So we're just so in awe that we just stay away and we just like watch them. So that's why I didn't really talk to him at that time. And so what I remember thinking about at this moment, I remember thinking that he was very special because now it's also another Tibetan tradition. So Garchen Rinpoche is a very high Lama. And so there is this, in general in the Tibetan tradition, especially in the older days, so that the Tibetan Lamas, if they're high Lamas, they would not just like go out like that and go around the stupa. They would go around like very fancy. I mean, it would be a whole it would be a kind of an entry they make wherever they go, together with an entourage of monks and attendants. So everybody would know that is a special Lama in general. But anyways, they wouldn't go out much. Mostly the high Lamas would just stay at home and not go anywhere. So then I saw Garchen Rinpoche walking around the stupa, and I almost didn't recognize because he just looked like a completely normal, ordinary monk. There was nothing special going on around him, and I could really tell that this is really someone who really takes the lower seat and who is not at all out for any kind of recognition. He's just acting like a completely normal person. So then later, in Changchupling, which is in Dehradun in India, Garchen Rinpoche. That was in 1998, so a few years later. 1994. So Garchen Rinpoche came to Changchupling. So he traveled actually directly from Varanasi to Changchupling. So Changchupling is Dehradun in India. And Garchen Rinpoche bestowed the Yamantaka empowerment in Changchupling. And that was the first empowerment I had received from him, and also the teachings. And then also they held a Yamantaka Drupchen at Changchupling, and I really wanted to attend it. But because I was completely new, I was not picked, not selected to be like one of those monks who could enter, because I was quite a high demand and not everybody got a seat.
그래서 마음에 저는 뭐 남아서 제가
Then in 1995, I went to Rajpur in India. At the Sakya monastery, there was an event where His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave some teachings. And at that time already, Garchen Rinpoche already had returned to Tibet at that time. And during His Holiness's teachings, the Dalai Lama, he said that, recently I met this Lama from Kham, from eastern Tibet, and he asked me for the Bodhisattva vow. And I told him, but you already know all about the Bodhisattva vow, but he still insisted. And that Lama was Garchen Rinpoche. In 1996, I met Garchen Rinpoche again in Nepal, and that was actually the time when Rinpoche was getting ready to go to America. So he already had a plan to go, and that was in summertime, and it was just before I started my retreat. And so at that time, I met him for the first time actually in person, and we were actually able to talk. So before that, it was just more in an assembly, receiving empowerment and teachings. And so that encounter happened in the home of, there's this Dorje there, Dorje Dondrup, from Nepal.
No? Singapore.
Oh, this thing. Oh, sorry. The Singapore Dondrup. So Dorje Dondrup, there's two Dorje Dondrups. So Dorje Dondrup from Singapore. So his uncle, it was his uncle's home where we first met.
That's Dangwa so same pimbo. One that go. Do so mixing to my teba. Don't that? To do no. Or to do it in a what he got it one SARS man says what Yamendaka. Don't you say so? Take on the shows. They don't watch in Yam to the class. Yam Samson and Bochi got you Chatham Kanga Martin Chilong Nantes. Be zoomed on you for Cap Euro. Someone don't pay for cut to contain this or offer what it imagine to do now. What it didn't you do? Money also there Yamada Cadena Pitcher Minish say you did it. You some surgery. I think just on. Now the cheese this or they mix it. So they want to home pass. Jason looks. The contact person they took you chance your center. Nina. Contact Yamna told us on the social 2 more my send Pentos a young door.
And then, so then I did my retreat, the first one. So the first one?
Almora, the Tambore, you don't go to said, really,
so that was the first 3-year retreat I did, and so I ended at in 1999 in Almora. Was the one, right? Is it Almora? Yeah, in Almora. So anyways, after that, in 1999, I went back to Changchubling, and at that time, there was another great Jigong Kagyu event where many Jigong Lamas gave empowerments and teachings, such as His Holiness Chizang Rinpoche and also Garchen Rinpoche. So Garchen Rinpoche was the main Lama who he basically gave the empowerments. And some of the other lamas gave the reading transmissions like that. But the empowerments are most important. So Garchen Rinpoche gave all the empowerments of all the Drupon Kagyu deities and also of the Yangzab and all the protectors and so on. So all the 50 Drupon Kagyu empowerments, and then also he gave teachings. So really he was there teaching or giving empowerments really all day long. And that's really when a very special feeling really arose within me. And I really felt that these are very different kind of instructions. These really like kind of touch the mind. So actually this whole event took 4 months. So it was a series of empowerment and teachings that extended over 4 months. So I got a lot of opportunity to receive these teachings. And that's when really a kind of a conviction, a real devotion arose for Rinpoche. And after that, actually, we held another Yamantaka kind of a Drupchu, shorter retreat. That was like in the main kind of, which is the, if you know it, the Labrang in the Changjubling. It's in the first floor of the main temple in Changjubling. And so it was not many of us. It was just about 20 or 30 people doing this Yamantaka retreat together. With the protection and the repelling part. And so at that time, of course, Rinpoche was leading it. And on the transition day between the protection and the repelling, Rinpoche gave teachings on the Ganges Mahamudra. And at that time, I had a... So there was one Rinpoche, Sengye Rinpoche, also his nickname is like Ali Rinpoche, who was actually a retreat companion of Drupon. And he was also in his Yamantaka Drupcha, and he was the one who requested these teachings of the Ganges Mahamudra. And so when Rinpoche gave these teachings, that's really when I felt like this really like hits very deep, and a real special feeling arose. And I really felt Rinpoche's bodhicitta, and I really felt that these are not normal kind of teachings. These teachings really come, are really only words that come from a direct experience. And after that, I started my retreat in Lapchi. And when I was in Lapchi, first I heard that Garchen Rinpoche had once again returned to Tibet. And I also heard that he fell a little sick in Tibet. And that's because of the high altitude. And once you get really sick from the high altitude there, it's not so easy to get better again. Especially in Tibet, people are not very health conscious. And so at that time I was really worried about Rinpoche, and I made really strong prayers that I meet Rinpoche again in this life. And then that was in Lapchi. And later when I met him again, I really felt that this is the result of the aspiration prayer. That's the power of prayer. So next time I actually met him only in 2006. And so then Rinpoche was first in Tibet, and then he came to India from Tibet. Because he was invited for the birthday celebration and long life ceremony for His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche's 61st birthday. It was winter time, so it was very difficult. Sorry, it was not winter, it was summer. It was summertime. So anyways, it was very difficult first for Rinpoche to come. He wasn't so sure if he will really make it. So finally, the last moment he did make it, and he was the Vajra master who held the long life ceremony. So that's when I met him again, and one of my monk friends, my companions, took me with him to his private chambers to receive some instructions. So speaking of private chambers, actually he was staying in a retreat hut in the nunnery at that time in Zhangzhubling. And so we went there to his hut to receive instructions, and the instructions that we received were really quite extraordinary, and a very overwhelming feeling really overcame me at that time. And the feeling was like, after having received these kind of instructions, you almost can't help but practice, and you just have no choice but to practice it. So this is really when the devotion to Rinpoche grew even stronger.
다 지당 지난 거네 진짜 그런 게 다들 몰람답도 개침 버리지나 대두 가서 가서네 다 회윤 좀 어떤 답시 회의로 이 요래도 전화 참 가려고 이제 또 가서래 라고요 말이로 그래서 대두 샘나 셔르킨 거 같으니 나다 소소 이제 몰람답도 준 제조 로아만도 전에 소소소 이제 다 총스들이 다 아리나lep도 담보가 시카고lep도 가셔는 폐업선 한다 봐 주변 나래요 중리 나면 선한 가셔는 폐업로 시카고 네 가 시카고 다 주변 세파 초래로 와 야, 지금 니동 초래로 와 니동 다 주변 세파 초래로 다 중리 캐스메스에 맞춰서 하는 가셔는 폐업선 잠도 시카고 대두 작전에 제조 치송의 rinpoche 휴사다 가서 들어 다 아니고 내가 고갑 중송 어떤 거나 대두 잠도 당연히 내가 뭐나 답let 지고 로아만도 그 대바 먹을 지나 그 로아만도 전화 될 총수로 와다 들에 제일 단나라 내가 디스티 rinpoche 다 관계 투표를 때문에 아마 세나 다 손남 치고서 이 삼쇼로 손남 치고서 다과 rinpoche 가초셔야 아tendu 코카브라쇼 다도 오늘 이만가서 랍시디데 모남티 디유이 삼동 삼상마랑 제네 니는다 제방에 만 rinpoche들 렌제 요스기로 와 와텐두 와테 제든 디브스 상마 가리나 로바메다 스티루린도 소소 삼네 텐두 총스로 와
So I really find that the power of aspiration is really something that is really very meaningful. It was really, I think, because of the aspiration that I made in Lapchi to meet him again, that I was able to meet him again. Because at that time, things were so uncertain. You never knew how the things go in China. The policies always change. And no one could really ever know if one would see each other again at that time. And really, the power of aspiration is unfailing. And because of that, I really believe in that very strongly. So later, when I met Rinpoche again, then, when I first came to America, I first arrived in Chicago on October the 6th in 2006. And in fact, only about 2 months later, around Christmas time in December, Garchen Rinpoche actually visited Chicago, our center, and he gave teachings on the co-emergent Mahamudra there. And so at that time, again, I had the opportunity to be very close to him and to talk to him. And again, at that time, I thought, this is surely the unfailing power of aspiration prayer. That is, if you make a prayer with great trust and with great devotion. So, and now I can meet Rinpoche so much. I've been here so many times, and I've been able to meet with Rinpoche directly so often. And I really think that this is the greatest merit that I have received in this lifetime. Now I can receive Rinpoche's instructions all the time. That surely is the result of aspiration prayers, and of course also the power of a past karmic connection. But because of this, I really believe very firmly in the power of the aspiration prayer. So I forgot to mention one thing about my prayer in Lapchi, to meet Rinpoche again. I did not just pray to meet him again, I also prayed for his long life.
가두이나 럼보시다 참닝제 창조 셈트 제 송켜도네 항상 믹스인 정어리 럼보치 그 문제는 마음표돼서 고만요 몇상만 연태한지 받아 아무네 두고리 세세 랍데 고만요 배참 문제 두번도 세는데 된주도 랍시데 고만요 럼보치 정도 내가 송수 그래서 난 정말 당당장데 야도 정도 럼보치 오늘 항상상래 상아 그냥 따로 와서 나도 정말 당당장 도야 깔아고 여러 레로 요말와 이나다는 뭐지 정말 당나지한테 야도 정도 된주 정도 어디네 제고 다 갈라고 잠니제 고는 뭐 신다고 요 말에 되네 그 동이 기타가 냠냐 치고나 저서 침보도 냠냐는 뭐 신면도 좀 공부리 요 말에 어디네 다 제고 성지 탐핀 되고 뭐 그러지나 말레스 말에 알아서 어디 알아서 다 뭐 신는 이제 토비야 배서 남친보래 아니 정모는 뭐지 싱가포르 송송아 가르세나 나도 정모는 뭐지 나도 이거 전에 뭐 이제 토비야 배선남들 점으로 진짜당 소한테 진짜당 점으로 진짜당돼도 싫어고 많이 저 저와 많이 다 해야돼요 대신아요 하는 통만요도 저와 섬에 어떤 가서 다단지에서야 배선남들 이나 호남한테서 이나 단지 약과 값이라요 말이스다 어떤 점으로 진짜당도 오늘 내수리다 제가 또 노르진 창선나 들이다 노르진 창선 돈이 이제 송수 받아 노르진 창선이라 소소 대바 먹으면 남의 기타로 봐요 말에 지남 주그래다 소보다 소소 대바다 남의 게 투게신 인좀 먹으면 소소 대바 미나자 투게지 부케지 하요 말와 어때 대바 먹으야 보지 대바 먹을지 담자야 보죠 남의 투게신 하면 주가다 로 봐요 말에 저 처음부터 태솜 거 말에 소소소
And so now I have the opportunity to meet Rinpoche so often, and he really is very unique in his broad, the extent of his realization. There's no one with that kind of compassion and love and that kind of realization of the true nature of the mind. And really, we always say that the essence of the Dharma is this union of emptiness and compassion. And this is really what Rinpoche represents. And this is what all the Buddhas are. All the Buddhas are a union of emptiness and compassion. And Rinpoche always mentions that. And that's really what he embodies. And what also I find really very special about Rinpoche is that ever since I've known him, actually, I've never heard him say a single negative word about anyone. I've never heard it. And whenever anybody else would say something, he would always say it's better if you practice a pure view. And that's really a sign that he has realized the teachings of the secret mantra of the Vajrayana. Because we know that this is not so easy for all of us to keep all of the secret mantra commitments and to sustain a real pure view in our hearts at all times. That's not very easy. But that's exactly what Rinpoche embodies. So there's really, I feel, no one who has that compassion like Rinpoche has and love like Rinpoche has. And there's really no one that has this kind of practice of Mahamudra and emptiness that Rinpoche has. So therefore, he really embodies all of the Buddhas. And I feel I have so much merit to be able to have met Rinpoche. In fact, when His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche, he was in Singapore. That time also Garchen Rinpoche was there. And Chetsang Rinpoche actually said to everyone in the assembly, he said he started to cry, and he said that it's so difficult to meet somebody like Garchen Rinpoche. You don't even know how fortunate you are. And he started to cry, and actually that's very unusual for Holiness, because even his own monks were really surprised by that, because they said they have actually never seen him cry like that before. So that was another very special sign of like Rinpoche's, his vastness and his special blessing. And so we are very fortunate, it's true, because all the Tibetans never have the opportunity to meet Rinpoche again. And so what we call emptiness and compassion is the Buddha Vajradhara. And Garchen Rinpoche is just that. So I really believe if we cultivate real trust and devotion, then there is no question as to whether or not the blessings of the Guru will enter our mind. They will certainly enter our mind without any doubt. So it's just that if the Guru is always compassionate, but if we do not trust the Guru and if there's no devotion, then it will be hard to receive, to really be receptive for his blessings. But if we cultivate devotion and trust, and if we keep our samaya pure, then there is no doubt as to whether or not the blessings will enter our mind.
다른 뭐지 저한테 그냥 차례 나타나서 세치나고现做我这么当学的这有让自己的同学都了国内做起嘛的现在做起我这在强宁节做特别我现在做起啊这他讲你讲说什么听当对的我但你们可对呢如果你们刚说的里面好了你们没记住好了其他同样有嘛是吧我特别可对呢特别讲你们去说的听对有的我真的他在르모치 가신제나 난 대바 치에도 치에면 총은 줘야 말 가신제나 오늘 르모치 요된 통 치에도 치에도 올라만은 제토야 아주 알아서 남이 잠다고 잠다 당화다 빠져 줘야 거카라 제방에 맥소나 침보 싸대도 잠시도 오면 대가서 갈래 가보러 어디 텐트 잠시도 되네 알아서 참아야 나다 저 르모치 이제 담화 쉬어 텐트 거카라 쉬어야 돼 오늘 다소소 대바 당나진 도지 장고스리 我都是抢走的，要他要买的，对的。我是打那说대바 당당 치 냠냐 치나. 오늘 지금 뭐 어떻게 좀 해. 저도 소소 다 남아 대산 생이 참아 고 쇼로와. 네, 누가 좀 단 생이 참아 다단 가시는 뭐 야타 참니게 나리. 다베가 냠냐 나리. 뭐시 야타 타라야 갈래 가버려 다다. 냠냐 소. 어, 진 누가 알아서 참아다. 로마 참에 이제 뭐지 담아 나셔서 좀 맞이지. 어, 냠냐 야고 치고야. 르모시 공 카르 냠냐 야고 치도야. 베케치 모르. 지나 소소소소. 센들라 팽게리. 치마라 팽게리. 어때니? 다당 알아서 참아서 남치 뭔들 선지에데. 어때니? 추소 마소. 지나데 냠냐 치고야. 케치 모르. 삼도로.
And so Garchen Rinpoche is really someone who only cares about others. Whatever he does, it is for others, and he never does really anything for himself. And that actually is the practice of love and compassion. That is the practice of bodhicitta. And he always remains in that state. Actually, I have never seen him not be in that state of practice. He's always in the state, it seems that he's in this meditative state of the nature of mind. I've never seen a moment where he isn't practicing. And so therefore, the more I meet Rinpoche, actually the more my devotion increases. Actually, it is not that kind of I become kind of desensitized and then it decreases, but actually the more I see him, the more I see his qualities. And the more I feel that I'm so fortunate for having met him in this life and having been able to receive all these instructions from him all the time. So that is definitely a great merit from previous lives. Otherwise, this is a very difficult to encounter. And all of us have the same merit because all of us have encountered Rinpoche so many times and we were able to receive his instructions. And if you can see it, then really you can see that there is no other Buddha Vajradhara than that. So normally now when we follow a guru, then we're supposed to follow a qualified guru, a proper, qualified, authentic guru. And really, no matter from what angle you view Garchen Rinpoche, it is really hard to meet a guru like that. Whether it comes to the vastness of his love and compassion, or the vastness of his realization of the view, his practice, it is very hard to meet a guru like Garchen Rinpoche from all kinds of perspectives. And so we have encountered him, all of us disciples, and since we have had the fortune to receive his instructions, it is really very important that we take them to heart and that we practice according to his instructions. And if we do that, it will be for our own good in this life and in future lives. And because now we do have the merit to have met him. And so therefore, it is really important to not waste that opportunity, but to really put his teachings into practice.
我这当个人么是这当的就嘛那修都个么你那我也是做头有嘛的怎么还能钱都个过来听那他们钱去修的都个吧变成啥人在修呢我嘛在那这是咱们说没有这个啥的上是吧没有有了的现在嘛好呀你嘛这的么是那那个等着我忙不有的当然在西边拉都个嘛的我没那我西边开始听着其实忙不了年都是吧我到听着我那些头发全都有嘛的我去听啊나 다른 뭐지 저 만찬에 잠시 효도 그러와 tendu 차대 그래 똑바 다바 냠내 여보 민나 뭐시 용거 말와 tendu 제 양데 다 저자 저 똑바 아니에 되네 똑바 뭐도 쇼데 차대 그래 잠닝제 저자 진보 똑바 뭐도 쇼데 차대 그래 인디 대침보래 나랑서 제 토바다 나랑서 전화 그러와
And Garchen Rinpoche always acts like he's just a normal person, but really he knows everything, and he really has a completely clairvoyant mind. He's just not really making it so obvious. But there were many times when I was certain about that, and also many of my friends have had similar experiences. For example, just to mention one. So one time, so one time, Drupon thought, I need a new, the monk skirt, the shamtab, right? The skirt. Oh, sorry, it's it's the inner skirt, right? So there's the outer skirt and the inner skirt. So he needed a new inner skirt. And so you have to know it's not very easy in America to accomplish that. Because first of all, it's very hard to get the right fabric in America because it's very specific, and then you need someone who can actually sew it the way it's supposed to be sewn for monks, right? So I needed a new inner skirt for a monk skirt, and I knew that's gonna be very difficult because for those reasons. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to get my skirt? And then there Rinpoche comes with a skirt in his hand, and he gave me his skirt without me even saying anything. So there's many stories like that. So Rinpoche kind of, he acts like he's as a normal person, nothing special, but really his clairvoyant power is really all-penetrating. And if one would not have the realization that he has, one wouldn't have that kind of clairvoyance. So that's a clear sign of having realized the ultimate nature of Mahamudra and also of bodhicitta. So again, we are really extremely fortunate to have met him.
근데 다 지당단 도르는 르모지 아존 제토야 베 존남리 드네 나랑 오나는 다 르모지 도진 창우 통쇼 와튼 나랑 제토야 베 가르바 상보트리 총송테 제토야 지고 말에 담아안들 쇼토야 와튼 디 나랑 참마트 케침보리 와튼에 당가서 주소 신도사리 참에 소소 다제 르모지라 대바 탐색 그래서 말로 시 소소 냠내 야고 지도진 로바요 말에 남아서 진이 된베 남았는데 로바요 말 와튼디 가르치는 뭐 사스텐도서 추는 말이 다다. 어떻게 나랑 참마 존남리 가르치는 뭐지 쇼쇼tum냐 참마는 존남리 때. 어떤지 되네. 어다더라 자리.
So again, just to summarize again, what we really should remember is that we are extremely fortunate to have met with Garchen Rinpoche, and I personally see him really as the Buddha Vajradhara. And I think we all are so fortunate to be able to have met him and also receive his teachings. And since we have this fortune, we should all be very careful to keep our samaya pure and to practice his instructions as well as we can without wasting that opportunity. And if we do so, if we keep our samaya pure and we practice according to his instructions, then really the blessings and all the accomplishment will arise in our mind. There is no doubt about it. So what it really depends on, our progress in the practice, is really also the reliance on an authentic guru. And when it comes to authentic gurus, really, there is no greater guru to be found than Garchen Rinpoche. So we really have to remind ourselves of how fortunate we are. And so now it seems that we're running.
요 정아치나 뭐 참아 뭐 후유 와데 대바 뭐 참아들 오늘 뭐지 다스미 뭐지 나랑게 냠내 공 냠내한테 또 공게 다지 가르 잠니게 뜻되는 게 제처럼 어떻게 좋은데 신인데 어떤 참아 어떻게 침본도 좀 다들 알이.
So I have great faith in Garchen Rinpoche, and I believe in him, I trust him, and I have the greatest devotion for Rinpoche. And I feel that there is no greater Lama than Garchen Rinpoche. And it's because of his compassion and his love and the level of his practice that I really fully trust him. So it's important for us to really recognize this precious opportunity. So now let's do some questions. So the first question is, I have been practicing for a couple of years now, but I think I'm unclear about the correct definition of the word realization. What does it mean to realize? What does it mean in the context of the nature of mind? One more thing about Garchen Rinpoche's story. There actually, when it comes to Rinpoche's his life story, someone could explain that really very vastly and profoundly and eloquently, because his story is so incredible. But since I'm an ordinary person, I can only speak from my own personal experience. So ni kambote dan lo mambo nga nyamlen se yin ni yang taron ti sik ti twa tokpa sia tokpa ki tokpa ki
어레레 어레레 냠냥 똑바트 똑바 못 쉬려
이 지다 다른 시다 하고 만도 똑바 세기 찍찍이 체니르와 눈에 똑셔야 돼 카르레스 아니 이
빠스
이 샘기 오고도 그라 샘기 오고도 이제 똑바라 이 샘기 오고도 없으나 눈에 카르레스 똑바
똑바스다 샘 오고도 고 샘네로 또네 마노르바스 또 고쇼 살바 또 왔으나 또 샘네로 또 고쇼라 또 왔을 하고 말이야 다 하고 네 소소소 냠냥치네 단들이 잠래 마노바 시고 쇼 와들 또 와들 지네 되네 또 방어 쇼 c'était tempo chassona de 또 방어 쇼
So what it is that we need to realize is the nature of the mind. And so first we have an understanding what the nature of the mind is, and then we practice meditation. And so the realization then is when you have an unmistaken certainty of knowing this is it, you know this is it. And then when that becomes stable, so it always remains, then we call that realization has been actualized. Then, if I recall correctly, there are some practitioners who will never hear or remember secret mantras from the guru. What is the sense of continuing practice if one does not hear and remember these mantras? Would they only potentially reach the level of arhatship? There are people born with conditions or who gain them due to circumstances outside of their control that significantly affects memory. Therefore, the lack of ability to remember any secret mantras is not their fault. It seems quite unfair that these rules almost seem to exclude people with limitations and handicaps.
Yeah. Really? Mantra, not yet. Let me sing on. You're really want to stop now. Mare. Really? Really? Madam. Mare. Not so much, yeah, think you'll be not the song you must write it off. Oh, Jitanti, so Kansa, so low, I'm raised on Tipazom Zong, Tipazom Sandwa, Tipazom Jim, Tipazom Jing, and June, and Jambesi, Tipazom Jing, and Tipajing Junis. What is that? Take you, Chancho Santipa, Tipa Yento Ranger, Chancho Santipa Yora. What is it? What then do you get on the so Kansa, so low, Jantan Chepa Yore? Kashi in that day, Zanga Diana, Chirago, Mago, Minatiana, Pentoshira, Yomaro. Koran Yamnate Tipa Karena, Zo the Koran Karemopa one, I think Yamnachin the Armia, the Tichian Chijit in a Gawumina, the Yabushira Yomare. This so Yamna Telechina, Bechanda season, Yetu just Tipandas and Yamnachin, Yetu Tipat and Yamna Mambochin, they Tazing also Tichian looks of China, Tipachim Bolam show to ya. What a lamte, Yetu Lam, the Ransanji Lamteso, Karisana, Ya. That's something the Tipachim book no major to Yatran Royak cheater, Yeso Jacksandam. Beshower, Jamso Zekinala, Norbilans Droguna, that Jamso Cheta, Norbu Marana, the Trotanian Tipombote, Somponte, Somponte, Besharation, Zuntrunda, Yona Zuntru, Jamso Tiji, Sachimbo, Nakachimbo, Drew, the Retty. Oh, Zuntruk doing it. Oh, Trom don't you by the part. Ramanda si trata da was Spagna so tapti gon. The ta Jamson no land roje the north. Raris. The not some Gali Haran so na sonsoni. What an iris that you told the so Sanjik Tango Jim Sante, Tipa Chimbola, Lamson then Madrid did so la. What then you told the Ransanjis sone, Tipa Chimbola sugar cheat. What is on it? What then that he sent your Matson said in Noah. What did I don't number champs ya marita? Go get on. Nyamleachi duty notes gore, tenjor sang gore, selafur magic. Carsanati, Matsanati, Kosho Marva, Tikilafur magic, then don't you chicle Marilla? Jaja Martin, how was on the record in the Inada? That's a deluge, Sanjay said to be on one. What it to be a Latin Gochaso, Slapper, Carsana, that's it, so how Marashara. What is a magic? No, maybe Mamma Marico, Simpson, Sanjay to be a novel, the Kenny Yoruba. That's all thing as Zangak, that one rote, Lord Namit, or Chiundi. That's Zangaklam, Droya Cheshikura, Zangalam, the Seja Louis Sanji Zokura. Then do that in Georgia to the Yundi. What it did Seja Louis Sanji, I think of Chansok, yes, so the Ambomatana. And there is no Josiam, the champions of Yamari, Yamnagan, John Jackaris. There's Sangoris, as Seja Sanji Yasura. What's it? The lapture.
So,
Tararwa.
So in Buddhism, it's not just one path that suits everyone, but depending on our different wishes and tendencies and capacities, there are different vehicles that we enter. So there is the Theravadan vehicles and the Mahayana vehicles, and then there's the Vajrayana vehicle, and also we could say that they are the vehicles of the Shravakas and the Pradyekas or the Arhats, and then the Bodhisattvas and so on. So there's different kind of ways to go to train one's mind to practice the Dharma, and not one thing works for everyone. So not everyone actually wants to practice the secret mantra, the Vajrayana. And so if you would sort of impose it on someone or give them the teachings anyways, it wouldn't really benefit them because they have no interest. So it is better to teach someone something that they are actually interested in and that they have an aspiration to practice. So that's why we progress in stages. So there are many, for example, who are drawn to the path of the Shravakas, for example, and then eventually, slowly, maybe they also enter at some point the Bodhisattva vehicle of the Mahayana. But how it is with the Shravaka vehicle, of the Arhat vehicle, basically, is that it's like when like a ship filled with merchants is going out to the ocean to catch jewels, and it's a lot of work. And so eventually all the workers get really tired, and then one of the merchants on the ship, he miraculously makes an island appear where all the merchants can take a little break. And so then he tells them, now you can take a break for a few months before we move on. And so then they are not so exhausted. And so it is said that maybe the Shravaka or kind of Arhat vehicle is a bit similar to that. It's like a resting island that the Buddha provided for those who find it hard to move forward the way we do in the Mahayana or in the Vajrayana. So then they take their time, and later, then they enter the Mahayana path and so on. Regarding the physical limitations and the handicaps, so first of all, there is no like rule in Buddhism that kind of excludes anyone with a handicap at all. It is just sometimes mentioned that a handicap, depending on what it is, of course, but a handicap can make it difficult for someone to hear the Dharma. For example, if you are deaf, then you can't hear the mantra and things like that. But it has mainly to do with what your capacity, your ability to understand something. Of course, anyone who has an aspiration and who wants to practice can enter the Buddha Dharma. It is just, and there is no rule about that, who can enter, not enter at all. Anyone can enter, and ultimately anyone is a vessel really for the Dharma. It is just that there are certain things sometimes that make it a little bit more difficult for us to practice. And so we're not saying that in order to exclude someone, but everyone has their own thing that maybe makes it a bit difficult for them to practice. And so when it comes to attaining enlightenment in a single lifetime, in this very lifetime, then it is very difficult if there are certain impairments. Because in order to attain enlightenment, one must be also able to gain knowledge and really understand. So that's really the key point. For if one is able to understand, then nothing is an impairment. So it's all about the realization, really. And ultimately, really actually all sentient beings are suitable vessels for the Dharma because they all possess Buddha nature. Sometimes in the context of teaching the precious human body with those 18 qualities, it is mentioned that the impairment of mental or physical faculties could be a hindrance to one's practice. And that has to do more with the practice that aims to attain enlightenment in this very lifetime. So one must be of a very sharp capacity or faculty in order to attain enlightenment in this very lifetime. But in general, anybody can practice the Buddha Dharma. It is just there are slight differences in how we practice the Dharma. And so also, sometimes also, since we're talking about exclusions, sometimes I've heard people say that you Buddhists look down on women. But actually, that's absolutely wrong, because in fact, the Buddha, already so long ago, he actually was the one who gave them the same rights as anybody else. And he was one of actually the first person of his time when he was alive, because so when the Buddha Shakyamuni was alive and teaching, his stepmother was the first nun to be, and she wanted to be a nun. And at that time, that was unthinkable and frowned upon. And at that time, there were no nuns in general, not just in Buddhism. No, there were many religions, of course, in the area at that time, which were not Buddhist religions. But women were always excluded from gatherings or from practices or ordination and so forth. That was, especially at that time, unheard of. And the Buddha actually gave his stepmother the nun's vows. And in the beginning, actually, a lot of people gave him a hard time because of that. But he insisted to encourage anyone who wants to practice the Dharma to practice. So actually, also in many of the prayers we hear, the Buddha always says, son or daughter of noble family. We always say that. So actually, there's really no exclusion at all. Then, different practices visualize different colors of the syllable Hong. When we practice Vajrasattva, we visualize the syllable the Hong in white. When we meditate, then we isn't it red? So I guess it's sometimes we visualize it blue, and for Tsevang Tsimpa we visualize it red. And no, ultimately the color makes no difference. But for lay practitioners like me, I do not understand why we visualize the syllable Hong in different colors in different practices. Can we mix them in different practices? What will happen if we don't pick the right color of the syllable Hong for a particular practice? Does it mean that different deities have not received the right signals in order to get a connection?
Tendrin shakha sare zamdo. Kuna tena ira chinari. Ina da jidon jidon nga so tichina so drupta ke chimbore. Ina da di semne ya ra de zo ko nyamna chi nyamna ze chi na zo shine ne ya de speng gre zamdo. Ni ta ta ren bo ka pa da. Mo ne na yin zhuo tu pyo ji ma de zamdo ra de. De be sha na yo ro. Da je gong pi xin ba ze nian ba xin ba ze qi zhen ma de.
So we should not actually mix up the different colors and mantras and things like that, but we should practice just according to how it is explained in the sadhana, and also the color. So, for example, in the chakra samvara practice, the deity is blue, so then the hung syllable would also be blue. So this is how we know the color too. Or in the Jevang Tsimpa practice, the deity is red, so the hung is also red, and Vajrasattva is white, so the hung is white. So if you mix it up, it is not entirely terrible. It might still be some benefit, of course, because the mere focus on the hung syllable may help your mind to be in a calm state and may support your shamatha practice. But it doesn't quite become an authentic practice if you mix it up. So in terms of this receiving the right signal to get a connection, like when you're making a phone call, it's almost like you're a little bit out of range. So you're kind of in a blind spot a little bit, but not there. So basically, as long as you visualize the hung, you're not going to be in a complete blind spot, but maybe a little out of range. If you change the color, and so then maybe it's a bit hard to get through, and maybe a little bit hard to hear when they pick up the phone and so on. So it might not be really the ideal kind of connection, the one that you would like to have. For example, it is said that when you, for example, meditate, when you visualize yourself as Vajrapani, then you shouldn't recite the Manjushri mantra. It's like when you want to call Vajrapani, but you're really dialing Manjushri's number. So then you're mixing up things a little bit. You're not getting the person you actually want to talk to. So that's why we're not supposed to mix it up and to practice really according to how it is explained. And also that's because the specific seed syllable, the way it appears, is the life force of the deity's heart. And the color also has is related to that. It's not just the sound, also the color. And when we recite the mantra, we are really calling the name of the deity. And it is related to the color too, because it's the heart syllable of that particular deity. And so therefore it's better to practice it just according to the sadhana. But even if you don't, it could still be of benefit to your practice, of course, because it's always good to meditate on hung. But it is not exactly according to how you should practice. So it's like being out of range a little bit. So for example, if I look at you, Ina, and say, "Hey, Ani Dangme," are you going to say what? You will not say what, right? You wouldn't react. It's just like that. You just don't bother. Next. Then Garchen Rinpoche said today that all minds are one. It is very similar to the view all consciousnesses are one consciousness. This view is correct for Hinduism, but Buddhism disagrees with that. How can you explain this? How do you think this can be misleading for people without the right view on emptiness? Namshi changma namshi chigre yinayang nangba sangye dawati norkido lakido ale yinayang sem chama chigre lakido namshi chama chigre lakido samaro that Norgeri like Doti Karina, Kainsena.
Hindu Koran Nampi Jagri, Nampi Samajari, Laura, Nambet Laura.
Nambat Rinpoche,
Samji,
Rinpoche, Sam Samachi Grace,
so
Hindu Konso, Namshi Sama, Namshi
really,
Namshi Sama, Namshi in Korantena, Nambet Abati, Montu Segu Samarava,
Suki Matik.
Mari Namba. Meeting in some years.
Nobody
killing you, Samara. Tiniti Karina, Tini Candy Cola Carasam with Tini, Kains and a did about Corvan Nosona, Tini Benamikashi Coransuna, Tomba Nigi, Tava Young Tapa, Minkin and so. Did about Conatinichi, Bottom Dora.
Namshi Chipa Marisra. Namshi Murray, Namshi, or Namshi Zinko. You're what some Timothy, Namshi Zitson Zimbabwe, Namhira. Namshi Carson Jipa Mare, Namshi Sinibon Rumbo, I think Kare. Not Namshi wanted the Mare, Danzi Resi, Lupo, Chop, Didi. Rwa. Rumbo is do that Carson Cos, and you hear Jipa Resi, I hear Malaripe, Namshi Manton, Icheton, Sampia Manton, Sanjeton Zondoa. What? Then you know, Carson. Nazuke, Danzi Pahesona, that's some months that Jipa Chandra. Yes, Jeratamshi, Ishilon, is the Sanjeson, Danzi Hazen Sanjin. Sanjik the Javatamji, Hilon Jason. What is on Chandra is on Courage? Pechandra as a Hirom Chung, then no Chung Chumabo Lokuna. Then no Chimbo then for Sharwa. Then the Hirom Tadaka Yorwa. The Hirom then you to some general. They give your mouth, then I Chandra is good. Danzit Pahis on the Samaji is Rumbush as on Kurwa. For an Namshi said it, that's on Zimbabwe, and I'm here of Kurwa, and Zido Yat in Chuna, were married Namshi on the Jipa Chado your money. I had to show to know for me. I ran some to him and the Chulu get a meat or Chulu can be.
So it might have something to do with how we understand this term consciousness. And so in Buddhism generally, when we use this term consciousness, so just for your reference, in Tibetan it's namshi. So when we use the word, so namshi is consciousness and mind is sem. So when we use namshi or consciousness, then what we mean with that is a sentient being's kind of mind. And so in that sense, it's true. Our minds are separate. Because we are different people on the relative level, and that's because of our different thoughts and fixations in the mind. And what Rinpoche is speaking about is the sem, the mind, or he speaks about the yeshe, which means the primordial wisdom. So the primordial wisdom, or the yeshe, that is where we all are one. And when it comes to consciousness or namshi, due to the consciousness, which is a conceptual kind of state of mind, human beings and other beings are temporarily created. But as Milarepa had said, I do not see consciousness, I only see primordial wisdom, and I do not see sentient beings, I only see Buddhas. So when our self-grasping diminishes, then we all are actually one within the vast expanse of primordial wisdom. Then we all are enlightened. For example, if you take this this glass vase here, it's filled with water, and then you have another glass vase filled with water, maybe a bigger one, and then imagine that they both break, and then the water contained in both mixes into one. Then you can't separate it any longer. So it's just a bit like that. When our self-grasping it has disappeared, has completely dissolved, then we all are actually one within this primordial awareness or wisdom. So consciousness or namshi is what we call the conceptual mind. And I don't know how it is understood in the Hindu religion, because I haven't really learned much about it. But this is just how I personally see it. So I don't know how it is in different religions.
Chabrom de ta dang zi yore. Chabrom ma xue song chu chang ro ba. De nang xi zong ke什么zong duo, de da hua zong duo. Wa le. Wa de zong duo de da.
And Jigten Sumgön also said that whoever practices Mahamudra, I will be with them. So anyone who practices Mahamudra, Jigten Sumgön is one with Jigten Sumgön's mind. And Milarepa also said that there is no other Buddha than your own mind. And this is what Garchen Rinpoche always says. He always gives this example of water and ice. And self-grasping is like ice. And when it melts, it is water. So Rinpoche always mentions that. And does the secret mantra equate to the so-called innate sound of the mind? Is it also the same as the so-called gong sound? And is it tantamount to the sounding emptiness that Padmasambhava talked about in his teachings?
Sangha rangda jina ta nga ka dan rong ko shu sarwa. Dirwa, re. Sangha rangda rwa. Ala sangha sana ta sangwa se. Sangwa ma chama den ya me le ta sangwa nga rwa, nga rwa. Nga nyam ne te khare se na. Ta zai ko yidam gum ya rong de, nian ban da ya rong, zanong gum ya rong de ra me da yo rwa. Wa ta sangha se. Love gra sangwa nga se. Ta love gra. Ta da te Chuni rangda sen, ta dongbe ki zhanda, zhaya ku dongban zhang ko shu sarwa, dongban zha chi, dongbe rangda sen zhu, chuni rangda zu zhe yu sarwa, ta nga zu nilu dong na ha ko shu sarwa, men ta da lamsang zi chuni rangda de zhe zu. Ta jina ni zha, nga su dong xiao de rwa, rangda ngu ne ma rwa, de ni nga rang su dong xiao de zha de, ti ni bu di shin zha xiao ji ma re sam chuni rangda de de ko rang, nga su dong xiao de zha je yu ra, ne rangda ma rwa, nga rang su dong rwa. Ko na chuni rangda de rang ji ki zha zhe, de ko chang xiao sarwa. The thing about this and in a tang answer ni known as the Tijati, Yamnachi, Hine Gumiada. So this dark and Hine Gumia, or so this pancreas and the one year but on Yadam Gumia. The Chuni Randa said, Jadanko. Zhan rangzha zi zin duo rangzha zi jidang zi rangyi cha hong zhi mian zi nga rang su zag di na zi rangzha nguan zhuo ji ma ri nga su zag di na rwa rangzha nguan zhuo ji ma ri zi rangyi ko na zi cha hong zi ko nyam nian yabu wo na zi ko zi zha tin ko rangyi zi ko kan zhuo zhang wang tin yu li zi zha tin cha hong yang zi yu sa rwa wo zi zang kan zhuo long tian zhang wang zi yu ran zhang ma da tin yu zi su nyam nian ki tian nyam nang tin yu yung xiu sa rwa rangzha tin yu.
So first to clarify the meaning of this term secret mantra. So the secret mantra is not just one specific mantra, but secret mantra here actually, it basically refers to the Vajrayana, all the Vajrayana practices, and that are called secret because they're kind of hidden, they're not openly taught. But it's not just one mantra, it's the various tantric practices, the yidams and the mantras, and the practices of the channels, winds and drops, and so on. All of that together is the secret mantra. And this natural self-resounding, so this innate sound or self-resounding sound of the natural state of the mind, or we call it the self-resounding sound of Dharmata, is the sound of emptiness. And it is heard by those who have realized the nature of the mind. But it's not something that we just hear all of a sudden. It comes from the realization. And then the gong sound, which I interpret to be like this kind of sound. I hope that's correct. Then that's not an innate sound, or it's not a natural self-resounding sound, because it doesn't sound on its own, so it's not self-resounding. It only sounds if we actually hit the bowl, then it sounds. And then also, in fact, and this also is, however, even though it's not self-resounding, we should not look down on it, because it is used for meditation practice, and it can help us to come to a state of calm abiding. And then regarding the mantra recitation, so taking a specific mantra of the secret mantra, it's also not really an innate sound for us, and because we are still actually reciting it. So it is sounded when we recite it, and it's not sounded when we do not recite it. So it doesn't kind of sound on its own. But sometimes when someone's practice becomes really advanced, then sometimes they hear the sound of the mantra, like for example, dakinis appear and they chant the mantra, or they give a prophecy and so on. So there are certain practitioners who have visions of the sound of mantra. When I was doing retreat in Lapchi, sometimes I would hear from my cave this woman chanting different mantras and different chants. And I was not the only one who heard it. Many of the retreatants actually heard her chanting, but no one actually ever saw her. And at that time, I just thought that maybe it's just a yogini, like all of us, doing practice here. But then also many others heard her, and nobody actually ever saw her. And maybe it's also due to a lack of fortunate karma that we were not able to see a dakini like that, but sometimes we could hear her. And then, so today's lecture about the Trikaya, the Buddhas, the three bodies. As far as I know, there are teachings in which 5 Buddha bodies are given. The Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, Svabhavikakaya, and the Mahasukakaya. My question is whether the Mahasukakaya, or rainbow body, is what we see in complete darkness, or more precisely, this multicolored manifestation of luminosity. Sometimes be munar na nangwa kaya me barwa munsa da munar ra ti kapla sometimes dam no thong do no ti thoya ti chalo ti re kai sena ko khato dam da ki work in nangwa ra ari wata dinge ya go sai chu xie ma song si ra yin na gong nga da xia xia ro wa tan da den jia lu ming e xira xie ma song se ji dan jia lu se ya da dan jia lu chup du jia lu de chup dang ka xie yo sa jia lu ka xie to ga ne yam na de chup xio sa ri to ga yo ra kahi dene te jilu nyamla china rechung gu jilu nyamla china jilu chobra so jilu re ote jilu te chuptan jang ma da deba chen bu gu ti nang du shu de me ya bo xie ma so ro mana na za da so jidan deba chen bu gu re zong ye shu xie sa ma re te ka sa na xie ne nyamla on na ze samsang xie ne nyam ra ma ra xia hong ge ro de gu mo ne tin sa to gu tu re zo lap to gu ma wa te ote endu te nge ya bo 学习嘛，从事了。 So it's difficult to answer this question really clearly. I don't really, I can't really say that this is exactly what it is when you see this luminous form in the darkness. We do speak about 5 kayas, and however, I'm not sure if the Mahasukha kaya, which is the great bliss kaya, is equivalent with the rainbow body. But regarding the rainbow body, there are a few different ways to accomplish it. For example, one can accomplish it through the Dzogchen practice of Togal, the leaping over practice, or one can accomplish it by practicing the illusory body yoga, such as Rejungpa did. He attained the rainbow body through the illusory yoga practice. And so generally, when we practice shamatha or meditation, there's all kinds of appearances, visions that we may perceive. So it's hard to say for sure that this particular appearance is a certain kaya. So it's hard for me to determine that.
대화 친구 그선 냠난 줄와 메레고 단내로 차상 또 오는 냠난 줄와 메레서 다 대화 친구 그 연결해서 그래서
But what this Mahasukha kaya or the great bliss body is in my mind is that when someone has realized the nature of the mind and one has really one has gained ultimate realization of the nature of mind and always dwells in that state. That is what I see as the Mahasukha kaya. And then so the next question is about the nature of mind. I'm going to combine this as like same person. So when I see this multicolored luminosity in the center, I see a very shiny point. Is this point a tigle? And so this exceptionally shiny point. I had this situation that I used to practice staring at the sun. And after that, this uniquely shiny point in the center of the view showed up. While I was in a very difficult situation requiring a lot of effort, this point was pulsating with light. I have done various eye tests, including laser ones, and I'm fine with my eyes. Can you explain it somehow, what happened? And what is the point? Yeah.
지상 대화 친구 냠 대화 친구 페드야 진나 대체면 송거라 말아래비 냠 대화 친구 페드 총나 대체면 생겨서 주로하면 송나지 라이마 어찌지 전에 다지 나 티토게스 장만용스러와 토가스 장만용在新的 인지를 스러와 장만용 주시라스 미스러와 어찌지니는 다지 어디 전주 가시 용는 다 냠나 문투 치고 쇼사래 어찌지니는 짐바마지 다지 나랑 냠나디 시투도 전에 야부를 잠을 치마 코난테 되게 원나 동니래 동바지 냠나 윤치면을 타는 치고 쇼래 야도 상은 지도 야오사마라 신선한 안진바 창로 쇼사래 어tendu ongeteru konyo yoswa togarjamene kala ziba shosonde yaboma seteru konyo otendu o montu nyamna chimanda te ko nyamna compare ta nelo tarma chimpas nyamna chigo shosares o zajin insigresro ta ta konatigle de o ze sharia togar ganze sharia ozora te so insibares o te yina ngata nyamna chigo marwa to
So also regarding the great bliss kaya, this is also what Milarepa had said, is that basically when you are in a state, and this unmoving, unchanging state of the nature of mind, that is the state of great bliss. So therefore I believe that the great bliss kaya is just that, the perfection of the realization of the nature of the mind. And regarding this practice about the tigle and the light sphere, that is related to the Togal practice, the leaping over of Dzogchen. And I personally have not trained in that, but it might be a tigle. But basically, whatever appears in your meditation actually makes no difference, because you have to continue to meditate whatever you practice without grasping at whatever arises. So whatever it is makes really no difference, because what basically whether it's good or not good or bad doesn't really matter. But if you cling to it and if you think, oh, this is good or this is not good or what is this, then you are grasping in your mind. So no matter what practice you do, you have to let go of grasping and just continue your practice. Continue to stay in a state of emptiness without grasping anything. So as I said, I haven't trained myself in Togal practice, but I've heard that it's not good to grasp at thoughts. So when you meditate and you grasp at something's good or bad, it will not be good for your practice. So whatever it is, it's good to let it go and to continue the practice until you have realized the nature of the mind. So it might be a matigla, but I'm not so sure. Then with regard to the entire practice text, is it a daily commitment or at least once a month? And if it is a daily commitment, is it necessary to practice the entire sadhana? Or is there a more concise daily practice possible, such as taking refuge and visualizing the Hong syllable and reciting the syllable?
someone drop to me, he just married Sirwa. Sometimes cousin, that's in drops, they just me, he don't someone drops at it. To do your zero. Or on the various Sewanzi Batona, what I Julian Sewanzi by Yamnachi, Julian don't come near word. The cousin don't matona. That does see the Marton, then you about the Sayo and the Jamdo Simji, because it did so what he can do matona. 홍지보 검나 되게 저는 남아서 왕지 보고 홍지보 검디나 되게 홍지가 안 동상다 좀 보시 그래서 좀 손대 와려 제치고 내가 가서 제로를 뭐지 시가고 왕지나 되게 사람도 세던데 아주 디토비어 뭐라 되지 네 시사 말하대 홍 동야 내가 우리만 생wan지 사람들 하지도 그러고 손대 그냥 시셔도 어떤 가서 시토에 맞아 지 시고사대 남가 알아봐
if you are able to so if you are able to do the sadhana every day, of course, that's the best, but it's not like you really have to do it every day, because maybe it is the case that you already have a daily practice of a different deity, And then you can just continue your normal daily practice. Because just before I said, within the expanse of primordial wisdom, all the Buddhas are one. If you practice one deity well, then you accomplish all the other deities. And conversely, if you practice many deities not so well, then it's not so certain whether or not you will accomplish any of them. So it's enough to practice one well, and when that is accomplished, all deities are accomplished. And it's okay to practice the sadhana also once a month. If you can't do it every day, that's fine. It's just good to kind of keep a continuum of the Tsewang Tsimpa practice. And to abbreviate it, it's fine if you don't recite like the elaborate visualization, like the protection sphere and all of that. You can just, for example, see yourself as Tsewang Tsimpa, and then the hung at your heart, or at the navel, as also Rinpoche had explained, and then you say the hung like as it comes from your navel, like Rinpoche said. Actually, that reminds me, one time Gyalpo Rinpoche, when he came to Chicago and he gave the Tsewang Tsimpa empowerment, and he did actually give us a commitment to do a 1 week long retreat where we just recite hung hung hung, which is the Tsewang Tsimpa mantra, right? So actually I didn't do that yet, and it reminds me I probably should do that. But anyways, Garchen Rinpoche always tells us that the hung syllable is the essence of all the deities, the heart essence, and so therefore it is fine to just visualize the hung, but maybe first you see yourself as the yidam, and then you just focus on the hung. And so also at that time, with Gyalpo Rinpoche, I only received the empowerment, not the teachings. And now actually we are able to not only receive empowerment, but really elaborate teachings. So we are really very fortunate, and for that reason we should really do our best to actually practice it too. If I didn't get it wrong, in today's teaching, Rinpoche taught that it is the mind that is the basis for all samsaric and nirvanic appearances. And it is the nature of the mind that is the single ground mentioned in the Gunsang Mönlam. And the nature of the mind is gatak, the primordial purity. And what recognizes the nature of the mind is rangrik, or self-awareness. Then how does rangjung yeshe, the self-arising innate insight, fit in? Is it also the basis of samsara and nirvana? Is it also the single ground in the Gunsang Mönlam? And what is the relationship between it and rangrik, gatak, or mind? Deni kunzamen la yang shichik yore so shichik yes deni yang pashe semgi ngo ti kata re kata deni semgi ngo ti tongken ti rangrek deni yang kosong deni yang rangchun yesha se chik twa deni rangchun yeshe ti tiran tensa chamadan yore ba sem deni kata deni shichik yore rangrek tenson java khara yore is dini yeshe se rangjung yeshe tiang korang yang khodet thamchiki jerves dini kunsam malam nangshin shichik tirves and tortuna di rangrik dini kata dini sem dini sama yora rangjung yeshe esa sama ki drava khare yores
ta rangre
thamachik
ta rangre senara rangjung yeshe dina ta jipan da sa re sra rangre kata sena ngo ta kan ta ba jong ji mangu de le la phur da 是吧？我这里，我知道呢，我这先是有把门一二位讲嘛，这是农家人讲中有了，有把门一二位讲嘛，这没把门一昆的经济些是，跟的门一送就别了，是你们给的来嘛的送就，有没你送就的， mini ta chi de sa zong wo de 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 wo de gan ta ba se gang yang zhou ba ta chi che de ga ta ba se xiao sa ba wo de ye sa rang jiu zi rang qiong de yi xie zi na zhe rang rei se na rang rei pe do me xi ba se na la ta de ji guan de hui shu sa de是吧 rang rei pa se na la ji dang xian se de ma jie sing zu qiao jian ke rang xian de wo ma s la de zu xian gang la de rikwa se de ma fe ju qin do xian se na ze nam xi yu ba xian rang ze xiao sa de da xin ba de rikwa se de an de lu xi ya ze do se na yu sa de da zu xian ke lu zu de qiao jian lu zu yin ze xian ze na ko ne lo ra da ge le我那批种的，让他有梦有吧，他现在是，那是啥的。然后写现在他人的写法才啥子呢？这学啥写在上面的有吧？工地工写的是哪的？写在这里的有慢慢节约讲没慢慢是老双一的。
So this Rangrik, which I would probably, I don't know if I would translate it as self-awareness. Actually, I would maybe say one's own awareness is one's own awareness, and the Rinchen Dorje, which is this like self-arisen primordial wisdom. They are basically the same. And in terms of Gatak, which is the original purity, Gatak speaks of its essence, its quality. So the essence of this awareness is originally pure, meaning that it is unstained by any flaw. Longchen Rabcham had said, it can not said to be existing because even the Buddhas have not seen it, nor can it said to be non-existing because it is the basis of all arising of samsara and nirvana. And these two, like not being existing and not being non-existing, are non-contradictory. They are actually a union. And that is what we call the freedom from extremes. Or also we call it the freedom from all conceptual elaboration. The freedom from all conceptual elaboration is this original purity, the originally pure nature of the self-arisen primordial wisdom or one's own awareness or Rigpa. And now sometimes in terms of those terminology, it is actually explained a little bit different in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen teachings. So remember we talked about Namshi, consciousness, and Sem, the mind. So in Mahamudra, when we speak about mind, the nature of mind, we actually mean the true nature of the mind. So not the afflicted mind, but when we say Sem, which is the mind, Sem, according to Mahamudra, means the nature of the mind. And in the Dzogchen, however, the true nature of the mind is called the Rigpa, so which would be the same as the Sem in the Mahamudra. So the Mahamudra Sem or mind is its counterpart is Dzogchen's Rigpa or intrinsic awareness. And in the Dzogchen teachings, the Namshi, the consciousness, is actually what they call the mind, the Sem. So in the Dzogchen, Sem or mind actually is the consciousness, which we have said is generally the afflicted conceptual mind. So there's a slight difference here. And so regarding the one ground, the single basis, so the single basis is this original self-born awareness. That is the basis of all of samsara and nirvana, and its nature is originally pure.
我在这条件走线就当七八月嘛，在非洲去当门的是，条件进步，做法进步，才了七八月，同七八没中，对对，我听就这，非洲去当七八的事情嘛，同大这块的是吧
？But just to be clear, there is no difference between Mahamudra and Dzogchen. There is a difference in how the words are used, but there is no difference when it comes to the actual nature of Mahamudra and Dzogchen.
That's it.
So thank you, everybody. That's it. Doing some dedications. What did we do with Kampo yesterday? So we recite some short dedication prayers in the yellow prayer book starting on page 16. So we do page 16, page 17, and then the first verse on page 18. Just as the hero Manjushri realized things as they are, and as did Samantabhadra too, I will follow in their path and perfectly dedicate all these virtues. As all such dedications have been praised as supreme by the victorious ones of the 3 times, I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue to excellent conduct. By the blessing of the Buddhas who attained the 3 kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging nature of reality, and by the blessing of the undivided Sangha community, may my prayers be fulfilled according to this dedication. By the virtues accumulated in the 3 times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the intrinsic root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious awakening. Great Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharmalord Gambopa, Pangudrupa, and Lord Jigongpa, may the auspiciousness of all the Kagyu Lamas prevail.
Thank you.
Ma jeva me pe juviena yon jebron la modona yo de semje con la de terma danji kwa con le jabdo so danji kwa con le jabdo so